Critical Role Campaign 3 ends with the cast in tears and the fans divided, Magic the Gathering is getting its own cinematic universe, and we're finally getting a live-action Gundam movie. Welcome to Fantasy News Friday on the Character Sheet, where we break down the week's biggest fantasy and TTRPG news. Before we dive into some huge Critical Role and Magic the Gathering stories, why not take a second to hit those like and subscribe buttons to help us keep these videos coming. It really helps the channel and we really appreciate it. And then, let's dive into the news. Critical Role Campaign 3 has come to an end with the longest episode in the history of the actual play. And while nearly every character from Vox Machina to Bell's Hells got an ending to their story, and the cast was left in tears as the episode ended, fans were left divided by the fate of Exandria and the Hells. Basically, as we predicted a few weeks back, the Hells effectively succeeded in just dicing their way to victory with incredibly high persuasion rolls, including a very clutch nat 20 by Imogen, to kind of force the gods into accepting rebirth as mortals. But it was the aftermath of these decisions, including the cast suddenly realizing that by setting Predathos free it would just seek out and eat someone else's gods, or come back and eat their own gods should they ever retake their divinity, that fans really started to feel divided in the chat and on their Critical Role Reddit. Every member of Vox Machina, the Mighty Nine, Bell's Hells, and even some of the Crown Keepers walked away with a happy ending. There were effectively no consequences for their actions, which has been a recurring problem some critters have voiced with Campaign 3, and the one potential death of a character was once again just fixed by the intervention of a more powerful character from a previous campaign, in this case Essek, as Ashton tried to give up his life to power the ritual to make the gods mortal, only for Essek to just basically kind of walk over and pump him full of Dunamancy magic and rewind time, and he's now fine. The Hells basically had no consequences for their decision. The followers of the gods who lost all their connection with their deities and eventually their magic apparently just let them all go without a fuss. There was no backlash against them, there was one slightly angry guard who then just sort of let them pass, and they fundamentally altered the future of Exandria and most of its inhabitants without paying any real personal costs. Nana Mori even let Orem out of his deal, with Matt basically pretending like it was all a kind of joke and that she could have never enforced that deal to begin with, which seemed odd and left a lot of fans scratching their heads. That said, we will dive into the pros and cons of Campaign 3 in a later video. That's not the purpose of this. But the finale also did have some great moments, like Breus realizing he'd been saying his own god's name wrong to his face for the entire campaign. And we also got the appearance of guest characters like Frida and Deanna and several of the Crown Keepers, and maybe the most interesting bit of the finale, where Caleb from the Mighty Nine was trying to keep track of Ludinus, assuming that the elf was out there still plotting against the gods, making plans to destroy them, only to discover him peacefully making tea and relaxing in a cottage in the Shattered Teeth somewhere, making fans wonder if Campaign 3 ended exactly the way Ludinus had been hoping for, and if Bell's Hells may have indeed become the instrument of his will without ever really realizing it. Either way, it was an incredibly interesting end of the campaign, and keep an eye on the channel in the next week or so as we break down what it all means for the future of Critical Role and Exandria. Oh, and despite the entire cast getting a chance to roll with advantage to kill Chetney, the character Travis never expected to survive past a few episodes still refused every attempt to put him in the dirt.
Chetney should not be alive.
Magic the Gathering is getting its own cinematic universe, as Hasbro has entered into a partnership with Legendary Entertainment to create live-action feature films and television series set in their incredibly popular Magic the Gathering universe. While an animated series is already in the works with Netflix, this deal seems to be aimed at creating big live-action movies and TV series to help bring Magic the Gathering to the big screen and streaming services everywhere. With around 50 million players, this move makes a ton of sense. If you consider that Games Workshop finally reached a similar deal with Amazon Studios for their Warhammer Cinematic Universe earlier this year, and with Magic already pushing for huge collabs with other popular IPs like this summer's massive Final Fantasy Universes Beyond set, it's clear that Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro see Magic as the massive fantasy brand with the biggest chance to become a true breakout cinematic universe in a way that Dungeons & Dragons seemingly never quite could. With Final Fantasy, SpongeBob, and Fortnite collabs hitting Magic the Gathering just this year alone, the game has never been bigger, and we can't wait to see how this partnership with Legendary, the company behind the amazing new Dune movies, brings the mini worlds of Magic the Gathering to life.
Heck yeah!
Speaking of Magic the Gathering, Matt Mercer's renewed love affair with the card game was back on display yet again this week, as he returned alongside well-known streamer Dr. Lupo, whose charity stream Matt Mercer also played Magic on just a month back, for another game with the Commander at Home YouTube channel crew. Matt was back on the channel playing a new Commander deck, this time led by a character he voiced in Baldur's Gate 3, as he unleashed the power of Minsk and Boo, timeless heroes, on the rest of the players. Matt spent a ton of his turns in character voicing Minsk, and it got even more ridiculous when Dr. Lupo also played his own copy of Minsk and Boo, which led to Matt having to be in character for basically half of the game. Clearly, Matt Mercer has been bitten by the Magic the Gathering bug in the last year, as have a lot of other players, so not only is this a great sign for that Magic the Gathering cinematic universe we just talked about, it's also a pretty sure indicator that we can expect more Magic the Gathering content from Critical Role sometime in the next few months, as they look to fill some gaps in streams and videos between Campaign 3 and 4.
Here to bring the majesty of the Forgotten Realms into the battlefield.
And finally, Gundam is getting a live-action movie also from Legendary Entertainment, which has already begun full production. Gundam is one of the longest-running and most popular anime franchises in the world, and while this film was originally announced way back in 2018, nothing had been heard about the project for years, until just this week when Bandai Namco and Legendary announced that production had finally begun. Not only is Gundam a massive anime franchise with 25 anime series and 34 animated films already under its belt, but its toy line, which includes the popular Gunpla model lines, helped the franchise bring in nearly $1 billion of revenue annually. While no word yet on the official title or storyline of the Mobile Suit Gundam movie, we do know that it is being helmed by Jim Mickle, who also developed the series Sweet Tooth on Netflix. 2025 is a huge year for Gundam, who is also launching their Gundam the card game and Gundam Assemble, a new Gundam miniatures game, later this summer. And now that production is finally underway on their first ever live-action film, 2025 could truly be the year of Gundam. And that's all we have for this week. Let us know what you thought about the Critical Role finale in the comments, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons.
Good.